Hi, welcome back to There's Something Happening Here. This is our fifth and final segment of our episode, Wars and Rumors of Wars. And so far we have talked exclusively about the conflict in Ukraine involving Russia. We've talked about some prophetic ideas that we can use to help understand that conflict a little bit better. Now for this fifth segment, we're going to broaden our view outside of Ukraine and look at some of the other conflicts that are bubbling up in our world right now. So as always, I need you to hit that subscribe button and make sure that you are always going to receive what we produce. I hope you realize by now that we're talking about important things, consequential things relating to the present and also the future. And if you're a believer in the Bible, we're talking not just about the future of this world, but your eternal future as well. So again, hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you are always going to receive what we produce here. Unfortunately, Russia and Ukraine is not the only place in the world experiencing military conflict or the threat of military conflict right now. And so we have to look at where else in the world is contributing to this problem. First, though, a word of encouragement from Jesus Christ. I am reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24. It's a very popular chapter. In case you haven't realized that, I'm in here almost every episode. We read in verses 6 and 7 and 8, 6 through 8 here. Christ says, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Okay. In just those few verses, Jesus tells us all these things are going to happen. Don't stress out about it because these things are not the end. The war in Ukraine is not the end of the world. The other conflicts we're going to discuss are not the end of the world. They are indicators that the end is coming, but by themselves, they are not, in fact, the end. And Jesus says, don't let it trouble you. There's nothing you can do about it, right? They have to happen this way. You be encouraged that the end is coming. In verse 7, he gives us the idea that nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. So there will be warfare like Russia and Ukraine. But I suggested way back on our first episode that kingdom against kingdom is language taken from the Old Testament book of Isaiah, chapter 19, and the context there is not nation A versus nation B, but nation A against itself. And so it's not just international warfare, it is intra-national warfare, civil warfare. So in other words, the picture of the end of time for humanity is not good. That there is just no peace anywhere. Nonetheless, he concludes by saying all of these things are just the beginning of sorrows. Now, that sounds bad, right? There's more sorrow to come. But really that word that's translated into sorrows is referencing the experience of a pregnant woman about to give birth, right? It's pregnancy sorrows. In fact, some versions of the Bible say all these are the beginnings of birth pangs. And so with that mentality, that actually is much more encouraging, because if you are a woman who has given birth, you may remember that that is a very uncomfortable experience. Now, I'm not a woman, but I watched and helped my wife give birth 2 times, right? And so I had that front row seat to her experience, and it was not fun. It was painful and it was exhausting, but then it was over. And the joy that came once it was over was amazing. It's the 2 greatest days of my life when my 2 daughters were born. Maybe second only to the day I married my wife, which then allowed for my daughters to be born in the future tense. Jesus is saying the same thing. It's painful right now. But he's standing over there on the sidelines as like the divine epidural to get us through this to the end when there will be joy. That's our job, is to hang on to Jesus until the day comes that we get to leave all this behind us and have joy instead. So let's take a look at the headlines. What else is going wrong in the world today? Well, we're going to start in our perennially returning member of the axis of evil, to borrow a phrase from George W. Bush, our friends in North Korea. We had a president who told the leader of North Korea that we have a nuclear button too and ours works. Well, North Korea is pretty intent on demonstrating that their nuclear button works also. And so I'm reading an article from October 11th of 2022. The headline is, North Korea says missile launches were nuclear attack simulation on the South Korea. And we are referencing some missile launches that have happened in recent days where these missiles went over Japan, and Japan had to do their drills of hiding and whatnot. Then Japan is used to this, unfortunately. It's been a few years since that happened, but not too many. So this statement is that, yeah, we did that, and it wasn't just to scare Japan or America. It was actually because we are getting ready to have a nuclear war against South Korea. We want to revive the Korean War from the 50s and make it nuclear. Well, I hope that you realize that he is emboldened to do this because of Russian President Putin's talk about tactical nuclear weapons as well. You know, he's prior to this point, North Korea has always aimed its hatred against America. Like, do you remember in 2017, I think it was, where he was threatening to launch a missile against Hawaii, and then Hawaii actually mistakenly had a island-wide, the missiles are coming drill, and it scared everybody to pieces, and then it turns out, oops, we were wrong. So that was just a handful of years ago. Now it seems like it's changed. Now my guess is probably because their technology can't actually reach America, even though they claim it can. So they're staying more local because they're empowered by Russia to use this nuclear language. We don't have to reach across the Pacific anymore. We can aim just below our border and throw in the word nuclear and panic the entire world. It's like things are destabilizing in real time. Similarly, I'm looking at an article from the Washington Post. This is from October 12th of this year. And President Xi's looming third term in China raises threat of war over Taiwan. This is almost old news by this point. We've been talking about China threatening to invade Taiwan for more than a calendar year already. But now that President Xi looks like he is going to accomplish a third term as president in China, then all of that chaos is being renewed. It's like we have renewed our subscription to this particular flavor of chaos. That is a major problem for not just the United States, but every industrialized country. And at this point in 2022, there are very few countries that are not industrialized insofar as having some sort of internet access and computerized infrastructure. So whether they're hugely advanced like a Western country or not, that you can talk to people on the internet pretty much anywhere in the world now, and all of that runs on silicon microchips, most of which are produced in Taiwan. So if China invades Taiwan and disrupts that supply chain more so than it already is, it could literally impact the entire world. So you've seen some politics in America to try to bring the manufacturing of these superconductors home, so we're not at such risk of this kind of international warfare disrupting stuff. But you can't just can't just do that. It doesn't just turn on a dime like that. And so we're all, I mean, I am certainly hoping that this is all just threats, like that Jeremiah chapter 4 scripture we read in the first segment, where we're hearing about war. We're hearing about it. I'm alarmed at the sound of war. But the war itself is still future tense, right? We're kind of in the anxiety of it right now. I certainly pray that the China-Taiwan war remains forever in the anxiety phase, because I think we're all in for some pain if that actually erupts into open warfare. We are looking at another article here. This is from New York One, Spectrum News, New York One. And I'm not familiar with that one, but this is a pretty good article. And it's related to Saudi Arabia and OPEC more broadly, the oil producing countries that have kind of joined this cabal to control the flow of oil out of that region. They recently decided they were going to cut the amount of oil that they're producing on a daily basis. And this is complicated and irrelevant for what we're talking about. It has to do with the falling price of oil because the cost of oil is so high that people are driving less, which drives down demand, which drives down the cost of wholesale. And so the oil producing companies don't want to lose money. They want to earn money. So they're cutting back on the supply to meet the reduced demand and then keep the prices high. I mean, that's economic wonky stuff. But the truth of the matter is that energy is really expensive right now. I live in California. Gas is hovering around the $6 per gallon mark right now in California. And in many places, it's significantly higher than that throughout the state. So President Biden recently took it upon himself to appeal to Saudi Arabia to not cut production, but instead to keep it at its current level, even maybe broaden it a bit. Now, we could go down a rabbit hole of why can't we just produce oil here in America? I mean, that's an excellent question, but it's not really relevant to what we're talking about today. The bottom line is Saudi Arabia and OPEC more broadly made the decision to cut back on their oil production, and that means that they essentially ignored President Biden. So like, oh yeah, thanks for coming, and also we don't care. So it's a major political blow. In fact, I read a different article somewhere on the internet. I don't have it in front of me, but they were claiming that this from OPEC is the so-called October surprise before the election. That's like the surprise thing no one was expecting that acts negatively toward the potential election in a month. This is a big deal. It is an absolute big deal, and our president, Mr. Biden, in response to that, well, I'm just going to read from the article. President Joe Biden vowed that the United States, in quotes, will take action to respond to Saudi Arabia after the country voted to slash oil production. He called it a hostile act. This is language of war. Now, I'm of the firm belief that if we engage in any sort of warfare, even like an individual military action, I mean, if any sort of military response gets taken by us against Saudi Arabia or OPEC, that is just like we took a baseball bat to a hornet's nest and we're going to receive the appropriate rewards. I pray every day that doesn't happen. I don't like paying $6 for gas, but I'm going to like war against Saudi Arabia even less. So I really hope that doesn't happen. I hope we find a different solution to this. But all of this is to say, whether we're looking at North Korea threatening nuclear war, Taiwan being worried about open war with China, the second most populous country on the planet, or Saudi Arabia kind of choking the supply of energy for everybody, the commonality is the world is falling apart. Right now, nothing is settled at all. Everything is shaken up. Everything is messed up. Everything is dangerous and fragile and kind of scary. So what do we do with all of that? Well, we have just in this episode, we have talked about the prophetic implications of all of this. That Babylon, that seven-headed beast that rises from the sea in partnership with the United States, the beast that rises from the earth, all of that requires a level of international military chaos like the world has never seen before. So that the only way out of that confusion and chaos is for this conglomerated demonic beast to rise into power forevermore until Jesus comes. So all of these articles from these different countries and their individual wars are all playing into that. All of them. I mean, every single conflict is ultimately feeding that animal that is going to come to pass. But I'm thankful today we have the words of Jesus, because he has a different perspective always on everything than we do, and even this one. So I'm going to read from Matthew 24 again, right? This is such a profound chapter. I'm reading again from this, and I'm going to start in verse 32. Jesus says, "Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all of these things, like the wars and rumors of wars and pestilence and everything else that he talks about in Matthew 24 here, when you see all these things, know that it is near." And he's talking about his return. "Know that my return is near, even at the doors." When someone comes over to visit you and he knocks on your door, does he still have a long way to go? Or is he there? The journey's over, right? All you have to do is open the door. And that's what Jesus is saying. When you see all of these things that I'm telling you about, when you see it coming to pass, know that my return is near. Understand that it's at the very door. All you have to do is open the door and he's here. That's what we're trying to do with this podcast. Help you open the door to Jesus. Invite him into your life. Allow him to take over your heart. Allow him to protect you from all of this chaos and to give you peace. Divine peace is the only way we're going to get through this with our sanity intact. Let him do that. Let him give you what you cannot have for yourself absent of him. And let him faithfully bring you through all of the nuclear threats, through all of the open warfare, through all of the economic and energy-based warfare, through all of the confusion, through all of the globalist demonic reach of the beast from the sea, through all of the violation of the beast from the earth's own constitutional principles, through all of that, Christ promises to give you peace and insight always as to what he is really doing in the world today. So I want to thank you for joining us on There's Something Happening Here. I hope that you're finding this informative and interesting, intriguing even. I hope that it has created a desire in your heart to better know and understand Bible prophecy, and that you're falling in love more and more with Jesus Christ with every one of these segments and episodes, because he is the only safe place to be in these days, in these difficult and dangerous and confusing days. Flee to Jesus. Stay with Jesus. And he will take us all the way to the end. I pray that the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will attend your heart now and every day until we can meet together again to look at more of what is happening here right now and what it means about the return of Jesus Christ. So may God bless you. One last time, go hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so we can see you next time for sure. And take care. God bless.